Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Half Pint session. Today, I'm joined by Thomas P. Hillman. And Tom was very kind enough to send me his book, and it's a book about Tolkien. Now, here on Pints with Jack, we mainly focus on C.S. Lewis, but as we're demonstrating by establishing a C.S. Lewis reading day, we're not beyond stealing stuff from the Tolkien Society, so it's always a good idea to keep an eye on what's happening there. So I've invited Tom onto the show to talk about his new book. Tom, welcome to Pints for Jack.
Thank you, David. It's nice to be here. I'm not having anything nearly as delectable as you. I'm having coffee, which is pretty much my standard.
Well, that's allowed.
But cheers.
I actually also have a pot of tea going, but that's not
okay.
not going to be ready just yet. So could we just kick things off by you introducing yourself to our viewers? Who are you?
Okay, who am I? I'm Tom Hillman. I have a PhD in classics. I taught classics for a number of years. I also, sold books for a number of years. I've been a fan of Tolkien for a very long time, and have been reading Tolkien ever since I was 11.
Wow.
I came to Tolkien because at that point in my life, when I was a little kid, anything that had to do with myths, ancient history, King Arthur, Greece, Rome, Egypt, you name it, automatically had my attention. And one of the things I had stumbled across was Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
And
at 11 years old,
sword and sorcery type stuff. Yes, exactly. I think I actually started on Conan earlier, but I was the sort of kid who, had to do a book report in 5th grade, and I did Lamort D'Arthur, and the teacher refused to believe I'd read it, which I found very insulting, and still do. In those days there was also a Marvel comic called Conan the Barbarian, and Marvel comics in those days had letters to the editor, which people would write in and say, "Oh, I just loved the last issue," whatever, and Stan Lee would actually respond. And so someone wrote a letter in saying, I just read issue number 4. It was the greatest siege of a city since the siege of Gondor in the Lord of the Rings. And I went, "What? The siege of what? In where?" And so I figured it out from there. I don't remember exactly how I found the book. It might have been just by accident because, of course, you couldn't look things up on the internet in those days. And I suppose I could have walked into a bookstore and said, "Hey, I heard about this book." But I found the first volume of it on a spinner rack at a stationery store. And I said, "Aha." And I started to read it. I loved it immediately. As soon as I was finished with the first, I went to get the second. I got to the end of the second. It said, Frodo was alive but taken by the enemy. I said, "What?" And I had to jump on my bike and go back to the store and hope they still had the third volume. And then as soon as I was finished, I basically started reading it all over again. And the rest is, 50 years of rereading it, over and over again. I probably read it 3 times a year when I was a teenager, bored my girlfriends silly with talk of elves and ents and stuff like that. So at least that's what they told me. So
trust them.
Anyway, so there was a period of time when I wasn't reading Tolkien, which was not coincidentally a dark time in my life. And when the movies were announced, I said, well, I really need to go back and read this. I hadn't gone back to read it in a while because I was afraid the magic would be gone. I had tried there. I'd had other books when I was a teenager that were like that I went back to in my 30s and was like, I liked this. I read this like twice a year. And I didn't want that to happen with Tolkien. Fortunately, it didn't. I thought it was just as wonderful as it ever was. And so I've been, rereading it. It's hard to say I reread it anymore because I never close it. It's always open, somewhere.
It's a ring cycle.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It is, I've certainly been fallen prey to the rings for mortal men doomed to die. So I just kind of got locked into that uh, cycle there.
I
So.
love I love that story. I love the fact that it was the movies that prompted you to go back to the books. Because
Hmm.
this is my repeated refrain whenever we talk about adaptations. Generally, I'm actually not that fast. I'm irritated if I think it's done badly, but good or bad, if it sends people back to to the source material that I personally love, I'm more than happy for people to take
Hmm.
it. If you loved Rings of Power, okay, all power to
Hmm.
you. If it got you back into Tolkien's books, I'm happy.
Hmm. Well, yeah, it was. There were any number of times watching the films, the Lord of the Rings films. We're not going to talk about the Hobbit films,
Wise.
where I just went, what? you know, Faramir said what? And things like that. Um, I thought the first of the Fellowship of the Ring film, I thought that was the best one. It was coincidentally, it was also the most faithful adaptation. Perhaps that's a coincidence. Perhaps not. It's a chance you call it. So, but yeah, I think they had a hard job to do. I think their hearts were in the right place. I don't think they uh, got everything right. I stopped watching the movies years ago because I I was finding that I was starting to lose track of what was in the book and what was in the movies. And since I write about Tolkien, Tolkien's books, I can't be saying, oh well, when Frodo and Sam did this, and I was like, oh wait a minute, that was in the movie. That didn't actually happen in the book, which I've seen happen. Um, but I enjoyed them. And I mean, I could say all sorts of things to criticize them. I could say all sorts of more things to criticize the Hobbit films. I could say even more things to criticize the Rings of Power. But the people doing the Rings of Power had it the hardest because they were basically making virtually everything up, and they had a tough audience.
Yeah.
In some of whom are more forgiving than others.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I actually reread it before the films came out. I remember the announcement when they started announcing cast members, and they said Sean Bean was going to be in it. I said, "Oh, great! He'll be a great Aragorn," and he would have been.
But he
And
doesn't
he was
die
a
in the
great
story,
Boromir.
so he couldn't
No, he
possibly be
doesn't die in the story. Well,
Aragorn.
No, Sharp doesn't die in the stories either.
You're right.
It,
Yeah.
So, but yes, you're right. I mean, Sean Bean, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Sean Bean is going to die. And in the movie about Troy that they made with Brad Pitt as Achilles, uh, Sean Bean was Odysseus,
Yeah.
one of the few who survives it all. So I bet he should start taking parts on that. Do I die or not? Die. Oh, that's 10% extra. But anyway, he was a wonderful Boromir. And I think Viggo Mortensen did a wonderful job with the Aragorn they gave him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on from the movies to your book. Now, there are a lot of books written about Tolkien, so the big question is, what needed to be said? What did you feel inside yourself that you said this needs to be shared with the world about the Lord of the Rings?
Well, one thing, one of the parts of the Lord of the Rings that people always mention is that it's almost like if you're going to talk about the Lord of the Rings, you are required by law to mention Gandalf saying that the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. you know and so everybody knows that pity is an important theme, but nobody had ever really written anything about it, let alone a whole book. I mean, they would make references to it and stuff like that, but there was never any kind of prolonged treatment of it going from the beginning to the end. and then trying to relate it to the larger legendarium. The real point, the real turning point in my decision to write something about this was because I'd always been interested in it, but was the moment on the stairs of Cirith Ungol, where all of a sudden you feel sorry for Gollum. All through, the book, you've been, Gollum's a cannibal, Gollum eats children, Gollum crawls in windows, Gollum's going to eat the hobbits if they don't, Gollum killed his friend, all sorts of things like that. Everything to make Gollum look sometimes pathetic, but also horrible. It's kind of like you're set up not to pity him, like Frodo doesn't pity him, and that moment where all of a sudden you are put into the position that Bilbo found himself in The Hobbit, where he could have killed Gollum. And suddenly he has this kind of almost vision of what Gollum's life is like. And that's what you're kind of given in that moment on the stairs of Cirith Ungol. Even though, curiously enough, neither of the hobbits is awake to see it, which is very interesting since supposedly a hobbit wrote the book. So there's no one in the book who could have witnessed this. So that's an interesting thing. And then so that got me started about thinking, okay, how do we get to this point where from Frodo saying, I don't pity Gollum, they should have killed Gollum, to Frodo pitying him, and when Frodo says, I do pity him, before that, Sam and most of the readers are probably going, this is not a good idea, Frodo. This is not a good idea. But then all of a sudden, here you are, and you get to be Bilbo for the moment. So this got me thinking about it further. And so I went back and I was looking very carefully at the conversation that Frodo and Gandalf have in Shadows of Past. And not only is Gandalf trying to get Frodo to pity Gollum, and Frodo won't have it. Then Frodo offers, even after Frodo finally says, yeah, okay, I don't pity him, but whatever, and because he basically dismisses, Gandalf's, claim that he should be pitied. Frodo then offers Gandalf the ring, and Gandalf says, don't give me the ring, because the way of the ring into my heart would be through pity. So here's this interesting paradox where, on the one hand, Bilbo's pity may rule the fate of many, but on the other hand, pity won't save you. So there's this kind of interesting paradox there, right in that chapter that's set up from the very beginning. That pity may save the world, but it won't necessarily save you. At least, within the pity of human dimensions. The sort of pity that we can ordinarily have. Not the kind of divine pity, because Gandalf uses the capital P there a few times when he talks about pity and mercy, and it's not spelled out, but in the end, I'm pretty sure that's what he's what we're talking about. And then it just kind of went from there. How does Frodo how does Frodo get from point A to point B? And how does pity, how is this dynamic of this paradox versus the power of the ring? The pull of the ring. I look upon the ring more as gravity. Tom Shippey has got a really wonderful way of looking at it, which is that it's like an addiction, and it certainly is in some ways. But I also feel that it's like gravity, because an addiction, you have to have actually tasted the drug or the drink to get addicted to it. You don't have to have that experience with the ring. The ring pulls on you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless. And so you've got this dynamic of where Frodo's got, Frodo is trying to destroy the ring. He needs to learn how to pity Gollum. He does learn how to pity Gollum after suffering himself But then he has to try and control Gollum, for which he uses the ring. And that doesn't help him any, you know. So, and I just kind of explored it through there, starting at the beginning and then walking all the way to Mordor and back with them. A very close reading of the text, paying very close attention to things like pity and mercy, and Frodo's interactions with the ring, which were extremely complex.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't actually mentioned the book title thus far. We probably should.
Ah,
It's Pity,
yes,
Power, and Tolkien's Ring, to rule the fate of many.
Exactly. And that's available from all the usual places. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, local bookstores. I mean, you're probably not going to find it on the shelf. You'll probably have to have them order it or order it yourself through, online. But it is going to be coming out. I think the official date they just told me recently was the 19th of December.
Wonderful. Just in time for Christmas.
Yes, just in time for Christmas, just in time to get it into that stocking. So, and I know that they tell me they've shipped me my copies of the book, so I know that the book physically exists. I just haven't gotten them yet. So otherwise I'd be waving one at you. Yeah, so it's coming out. It's a 200 something pages, plus notes, bibliography, all that index, all that other stuff.
Because Tolkien fans are always like Tolkien and very detail focused.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, exactly. There are actually I've actually worked a number of jokes into the text. I'm thinking about having a contest that if whoever can find the most of them wins a free copy of the book or something like that. But I'd have to find them myself because I don't necessarily remember all of them at this point. So, but I feel that it should be. I was waiting to be told, no, you can't make jokes. This is a scholarly book, but nobody did. So they were very open about that. And I'm glad to say that that the publisher Kent State is actually a publisher that tries to keep the price of its scholarly books down.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is that we're going to have a paperback, no hardcover, and a PDF. And the great thing about PDFs is that, of course, page numbers will match what the book says, rather than an ebook where they sometimes do and sometimes don't. But Kent State has been very good about that. I mean, and so the book is going to be $40. Rather than sometimes you see. I just looked at a book that a friend of mine's got coming out, and it's coming out from Routledge, and it's $180 or something like that. And that's just,
it's painful.
That's crazy. I realize they're very small print. And all of that.
Yeah, it's the same in the Lewis world. There are a couple of scholarly books that I kind of want to get my hands on. And every time I look at the price tag, I feel a pain in my wallet. So I'm gonna have to track down the author, bring them on the show, and see if I can wheedle a free copy out of them.
Yes, that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why you get into this game. It's it's for the babes and the free books.
It's why people write reviews, and things like that. Free books.
So that was Pity, Power, and Tolkien's Ring. Have you got any other books in you?
Yes, actually, I'm working on a new one now. I'm about 115, 120 pages in. It has to do with the great tales, of Beren and Luthien, Turin, fall of Gondolin, and how they relate to what I think of as the great themes that mortality and immortality, fate and free will, evil and divine justice, and all of that, all of which are set up in the creation text, the music of the Ainur. I'm working on the Book of Lost Tales now, so it's not even called the Ainur Lindley yet. But and I'm starting from the beginning, from the Book of Lost Tales, and I plan to trace the interaction of these themes and these tales throughout their development in over the decades. Because of course, as you know, Tolkien wrote numerous versions of Turin and numerous versions of the Beren and Luthien story. And because I think what a lot of what's going on is Tolkien, Milton, right, talked about justifying the ways of
God to
God
men.
to God to man, and I think Tolkien would have agreed with Houseman that Malt does more than Milton can to justify the ways of God to man. But I don't know that Tolkien is trying to justify that. I think he's wrestling with them. He's trying to understand them. He realizes that he's just walked out of the Battle of the Somme when he starts writing this. 60,000 men killed the first day. And a couple of his friends over the course of it, and he's dealing with a world that I say, okay, I believe in God, I believe it's all going to make sense in the end, but how? Because of course that's always the problem. No matter, you have the people on one hand, you have people who say, well, all of this proves that there can be no God because no God would allow this. And then you have, on the other end, you have the people who say, oh, geez, I'm blanking on the line from the Book of Job now. About
Curse God and die?
no. The one that says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh
of
away.
Course.
Blessed be the name of the Lord. And so, people who say, okay, everything, it means something. And then the ones on the other side, it doesn't mean anything. And I think Tolkien is convinced that it means something. But I think he's kind of working his way through what it means by addressing these questions. And he's not necessarily doing it consciously. But I think that's what happens. What you see happening in his works is he's trying to see how just kind of maybe get a little bit closer to the understanding that we like to think we'll all have of how it all makes sense and how it was all for the good in the end. And I think that's what he's what's going on with him. And so that this next book talks about that. So and there's also this shift in Tolkien as the years go by from very heavily mythological writing in the beginning to, by the time you get to the 1950s, there's so much stuff that's just like really philosophical and theological and metaphysical. And he's writing like Platonic dialogues between an elf and a man, and things like that. And so, and in part, I think the working out the dynamics of pity, in the course of the time he was spent with it writing The Lord of the Rings, helps him kind of move into that more abstract, more philosophical, more theological area.
Wonderful. Well, I'll look forward to that. And I love that you're focusing on some of the big tales. We began by talking about the movies, and it's actually my personal opinion that this is what they should do with the Silmarillion. They shouldn't give it all to one particular studio. Give them a story. Tell us the tale of Beren and Luthien, make it a standalone movie, and just be done with it. I think that'd be really entertaining.
Well, I've often thought the same thing, that that Beren and Luthien could be a great would be a great vehicle, or Turin could be a great vehicle. I mean, it's kind of grim, of course, but it's an amazing story. And but the thing about Beren and Luthien is that no matter who you got to play Luthien,
she wouldn't be beautiful
99% of the people would go, no, she's better looking than that. And it's one of my favorite paintings, illustrations of Beren and Luthien is it's by an artist named Donato Giancola, who it's like having a Renaissance artist. It's like Caravaggio or someone is painting your Lord of the Rings stuff, and he has this this scene of Beren and Luthien in the court of Thingol as she's presenting him to Thingol, and she's coming down the stairs towards Beren, and her face is turned away just enough that you can't see it. And I think that was like the perfect way to do it, because anybody's version of Luthien I've ever seen the face, I'm like, no, that's not enough. Nice, but not enough, you know. And so I really like the way that he leaves that, what her face actually looks like, up to your imagination.
Well, to any future directors that are thinking of doing that project, my wife will be available to play Luthien.
All right.
I love you, sweetheart, and I think I'm going to get some real brownie points for saying that. Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
Just before we sign out, where can people go to find out more about you specifically?
Well, I have a blog, which is Alas Not Me, at blogspot.com, and so I also have a Twitter account under if at Alas Not Me, and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it. I do have a Facebook page for the book, so that's pretty much it. I haven't gotten into billboards yet.
That's fine. And viewers, if you go to his blog, you can watch some videos of him reading extracts from his book if you want to get a little bit more of a flavor of what to expect. Wonderful. Well, viewers, please join us again next time when we'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.